Welcome back to Veterans Today. You are listening to us on the new WCEG Network. We are WCEGTalkRadio.com, Veterans Today. I'm Herman Anderson, and my other co-hosts are not available today, Anthony Aiken and Gus. I have Johnny Crawford. We just had a great first hour. We're going to continue. We are the Worldwide Community Empowerment Group. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and call in and join this great conversation we're having at 1-678-619-140. And a couple of things before we go back to the project, that Vietnam project. No veteran should be left without a place to call home. The number for homeless veterans to call is 1-877-424-3838. Again, 1-877-424-3838. And also, let me give you the crisis line. Everyone should have access to the crisis line. And the veteran crisis line is 1-800-273-8255. It's 1-800-273-8255. And this is also the number to call for PTSD. So please, if you're a veteran or a veteran family member that are in a situation where you need to use these numbers, please do so. And now we will get back with Mr. Crawford on his great project.
Yeah, on the last hour, I talked about one of the most difficult things was trying to find numbers. And so everywhere I would look to find, how many black men and women died in Vietnam, the numbers were different. So the numbers that I found are anywhere between 7,243 to 7,300. And so those are the numbers I'm using. One of the things that I wanted to do when I picked the states that I wanted to go to the states that had the largest number of black soldiers to come out of. That's why most of them are in the southern states and New York and California. My goal now is to go to each state, find a community where that I can actually photograph some veterans, because I'm wanting to photograph probably between 30 and 50 veterans. And more importantly, I need to find a place within that community, whether it's a museum or a school, that has a gallery that can host those portraits. Because again, I want to take the portraits of the veterans, but I want to leave them in the state so that the people in the state can see those men and women who fought. And I'm specifically now looking for black Vietnam nurses. And there are most people don't realize, there are a lot of black women that volunteered to go to Vietnam.
That is true.
And that's to me, that's even more fascinating. That it's a hot place. I mean, you're already not getting treated well at home, and then you'll go to a place that's worse. I mean, there's got to be some reason why you did that. So I really want to find as many black women and black nurses for the project, because right now, that the project is at the gallery at Community Development Department in Powder Springs, Georgia. The address is 4488 Pineview Drive in Powder Springs, Georgia. And in February, Black History Month, it's going to be at the Rivertown Center and City Hall Atrium in Riverdale. It's going to be there for a month. So I want to find, other veterans in other states that I can photograph for the project.
Also, let me add to that, I have a nonprofit group. My nonprofit is Helping Veteran, headquartered at ATL. We meet at Riverdale on the first and third Thursdays of each month at the old City Hall. The address is 6690 Church Street. So please, you are invited to attend my meeting And on the 6th of February, which is our next meeting, Mr. Crawford will be our guest speaker. And also, would you, as you mentioned, I believe off air, when you photograph the veteran, they also get.
When I photograph, there are 2 points to this project. One point is to let people know who these men and women are. The other point is that most of the time, most of the veterans I'm photographing now are, I think the youngest one I photographed is 67. There may have been a guy who's 66, but I think it's 67. And most of them don't have portraits of themselves at their age. And so everybody that I photograph, they will get an 8x10 portrait, plus they'll get a digital file. And Mr. Ellis, who's the portrait behind me, he used the portrait for his book. Mr. Ellis, as I stated before, is the first black mayor of Macon, Georgia, and he's also a Vietnam veteran. So the portraits alone are something nice to have.
So I know we're still talking about this. Would you recommend someone, a community, or organization that's interested in being involved in this project, contact your website?
Yeah. If you're interested, you can call this number. It's going to be a It's going to be a recording. It's 770-621-5006. Or you can email me at johnny@johnnycrawfordphotography.com. To take a look at what the project is about, just go to Vietnam Black Soldiers Portrait Project.com, and you can get an idea about what's going on. I just put the webpage up last year. It's in progress. What I hope to be in years to come is that the portrait, it not only has portrait, but it also has some video documentary. I'm in the process now of shooting videos of some of the men that I photographed, let them tell their own stories. To make sure I did it right, last year I went to Syracuse and studied for a week on one of their crash courses on how to shoot a great video. I can shoot stills, but I need to be able to shoot great video. So one of the points is to eventually have a website, that website, Vietnam Black Soldier Portrait Project, that you'll not only be able to see great portraits, but you'll be able to hear testimony from those actual men. And you'll, not only that, but you'll get an education about, what actually happened. And then also some interesting facts, like what songs people listened to back in those days, what books people listened to back in those days, how did people dress? I hope to, look at a lot of things that happened around Vietnam. How were certain communities affected? Because if you take a look at war, and this is any war, you take a look at, I've always, what happened to those communities and those people after the limelight. You look at my father-in-law, James Elliott, was in World War II. Okay, he came back and was my wife always talks about his dad saying, well, I'm gonna get this big check. And when I get this big check, we're gonna, things gonna change for us. The check never came. And so, their lives didn't change. If you think about suburbs in America, that basically came off of some sort of GI Bill. And so those communities were enriched with, some of the white soldiers that were able to get the GI Bill. So they got better housing, more money, the kids went to better school, everything changed. But if you got to go back to the same shack you lived in and you're not being able to vote, you can't get a job, then things are not going to change for you. So one of the things that I hope to look at is have some honest numbers. because one of the things I want to try to do is show being transparent and show what actually happens to people. You know, everybody talks about, you know, we're going to help, but a lot of times that doesn't necessarily happen. A lot of times people are poor by their own, you know, decision making, but sometimes other people make other decisions for them and they don't realize it. So,
well, that's exactly, particularly one of my co-hosts, Anthony Akins, is at Ben Hill United Methodist. They have a veteran ministry there, and I know also there's a veteran ministry at Cascade, and we're working on trying to get one. We're working on getting one at Mount Ephraim, so we're gonna do that. But a lot of what you just went through is really what we talk about a lot on this program is the veteran. If the veteran get their benefits and the veteran help their church and community and family, everybody is being uplifted. It's to start with with the assumption that you're gonna get some money, and the way you get that money is to get your benefits and understand your entitlement is what I found out. Because if there's a good possibility if you went to, for example, I stick with Vietnam since I'm a Vietnam veteran, but then Korea and World War II also apply. If I went to Vietnam and I come back and there's a possibility there are some type of service-connected disability that applies to me. And in order to get that disability, it's compensation that they owe you. In order to get that, you got to go through the process. And the process is, number one, is filing the claim for disability. And Vietnam our wars have that specialty, but the specialty for Vietnam is Agent Orange. That if you were on the ground not only just in Vietnam, but in Taiwan and certain parts of Southeast Asia, there's a good possibility that you were exposed to Agent Orange. And then therefore you qualify for monthly benefits. In a lot of situations, we have I have some experience in my organization, and we've had some people on this program where, for an example, you got out in 72, and you really didn't apply for your benefit right away, but when you did apply, you got approved. So you would get retroactive, then you would get monthly benefits. But VA is working on doing away with that, so you need to move on it. But that's connects with what Mr. Crawford was saying, is if the Vietnam veteran comebacks get disability medical benefits, and when we talk about entitlements, there are at least about 20 entitlements that most of us don't know about. A lot of people are aware of the home loan and education, but in addition to that, there are burial expenses, entitlements. There are certain situations where your spouse can get education, and if you have dependents that's not 25, they can get benefits. So, particularly in our community, we leave a lot of that on the table, and that's what my organization, some other organizations, trying to do, and what Mr. Crawford is doing will help bring this more to the forefront.
one of the things is I always point back to my grandfather, who was who never got past the third grade, but he was a big thing about knowledge, and being able to know what's going on. And now we're really, as I was talking to my students, I said, we're now really in a very visual age. I said, people are very visual. I said, and I was joking with my students, I said, they asked me, Mr. Crawford, how many selfies have you taken? And I said, probably 3. And they look at me like I'm crazy. And I asked one of my students, how many selfies have you taken? She said, this week or this other day. and I had to think, selfies, taking all these selfies make you selfish. It's all about you. And really, we don't need to think about it. It's all about us.
Well, that's true. And this is kind of, we talk about this on this program too. And it's, I went to Savannah State and I majored in electronic engineering. And I worked for AT&T and Bell Labs. So I'm a technology guy. And in the last 10 years, the information highway, a lot of us haven't got on the information highway. And what I mean by that, we can use our cell phone and make calls and do whatever. But when you talk about knowledge and you narrow it down to the VA, they have 3 systems that pretty much has done away with all paperwork. One is e-benefits, the other one is My Healthy Vet, and the other one is VA.gov. You can communicate, you can file a claim, you can order prescription, you can make doctor's appointment, all of that. No paper. You don't even have to make a phone call. But you got to be technology. You don't have to be sharp. You just have to be able to use technology.
And that's one of those things where, as I was talking to a person about photography. Now everybody's a photographer because of cell phones. The reality is that some cell phones can shoot pictures better than some cameras.
Exactly.
And the way they make the cell phones now, it's almost can't miss, almost. But and which is good in many ways, because now, you got pictures of your family members. I don't think people really understand how important photographs are. You hear a lot of older people, like a lot of older vets. When I first started photographing, they were telling me about their father and so forth and so on. I said, well, can I see a picture? And they don't really have one. Because back in those days, if you shot, the 60s, you shot with a Polaroid or you shot with a 110, and most people didn't know how to use that well. And so black people got used to peeing pictures that look like them. Look close to what they look like. Not necessarily how they look like, but if you just a little bit in focus or look something like you, and that's what people had. If you don't believe me, look at some of your photo albums. And so,
we have a different skills, and we have different. I was the one that I had an uncle that would take up pictures of everything, but I was the one that put them in the album. So I got stacks and stacks of photo albums that they come looking for me to find pictures of. But that's and if you move forward to the phone, I know I had people in my family take a whole bunch of them. All of a sudden it crashes and they hadn't filed them anywhere. So you still lose them.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that digital age in many ways have gotten people lazy, because you get it instantly, but you don't do anything with it afterwards, like you're talking about the phones. But getting back to the project, one of the things I think is extremely important for young people, I'm saying in their 20s, and to understand, history about war. Because now it's been tossed around like it's not. It's just something you're gonna do. But if you don't learn from your past, you end up repeating it. And I think once you sit down and take a look at maybe some of the things that your grandfather, your great uncle, and those things they went through, you'll get a different face of war, and you can see how it affected your particular family. You may not have known that everybody had that old uncle that drank all the time or stayed high on drugs. And people say, well, you know what? He went to Nam. And that's the only thing you knew. You didn't know what Nam was. You just knew he was like that. But once you get a chance to sit back and look at what he went through and think about the time. I always tell people, when you look at history, you got to look at the time. People say, I remember I was teaching class kids, I wouldn't have been no slave. I said, don't you think they didn't want to be slaves either? I said, but when they killed the strongest guy and put him up head on the pole, that lets you know that this is what happens. And I said, so sometimes you need to take a personal look. So one of the part about the project is that you get a chance to see some of your people in your community.
Well, I think that I know that helps, and it also connects the dot. It's like I said, when I was growing up, we had uncles and cousins that came back and had mental drinking problem, were real nervous, and if something went off and they jumped, we call them shell shock.
Right.
It's not. That's PTSD.
Exactly.
So, and you need to be able to connect the dots.
Because when you can feel history, my grandfather, he would sit down at the table and he'd talk about the Klan coming in, kicking in doors. My grandfather had a loaded gun in every room, and when he died, I was laying in the bed and I jumped up. My wife said, "What's wrong?" I said, "I got to go home and unload all them guns." He had a loaded gun in every room.
Yeah.
And, and I never, he was the kind of guy who, when I was coming as a child, he said, and, you don't point a gun at a man unless you're getting ready to kill him.
Exactly.
And that people are really shocked to find out that I got a gun before I got a bicycle, because I grew up in the country. But, I'm not like NRA kind. I understand the importance and the responsibility of having a weapon, but those when you can sit back and you can see your great uncle or your great grandfather or your grandfather, and you can sit down and then you understand why he sits alone sometimes, or he can't watch certain movies, and you can understand, and maybe you can have a conversation, maybe you can learn something.
You can learn something like we had a gun in every room, and I think I was 9 or 10, and I got a 22 for my birthday, 22 rifle, and like say my dad had shotguns on the wall. Then when he was getting disabled, and my fourth brother was there, like say I had to go home unload the guns because one day he got in an argument with somebody and he ran home and grabbed the gun.
Right. And then, I'm not talking about guns, but I was telling some students of mine, so the difference in times. I said I was in high school in 1980. From 1980 down to, I can remember, to 75. Deer season in Georgia, there were more guns in the parking lots than probably as many people houses, because boys would get off either before school or after school and go deer hunting.
Yeah.
I said, so there was so many shotguns and 30-06s in the parking lot of school, and you never thought about shooting up a school. But now I told one of my classes that when I was 6th grade, we had a turkey shooting. I said, I had a 22.
22 rifle.
Yeah. And I said, I didn't bring it on the bus. I said, there's a dude had his on the bus. And then I didn't think about it. Just took it to the shop. The guy in the shop locked it up in the closet, and that was it. But times have changed. Yeah. And I think a lot of that is because people don't understand. understand history. They don't have a kid get angry, he go grab a gun and shoot somebody. Back in those days, you go fight and you fight it out and that's all over. But now, if you don't understand that people dealt with those same issues differently, and you're in a situation where you all alone, you think you go by your own, way you're gonna handle things. A lot of times that's wrong. So.
Well, I think if the younger people would pay attention to the history and like a lot of what you talked about today, the knowledge and wisdom would prevail, and some of the things that they do so quickly they wouldn't do.
And another thing, but I'm a big history person of the history of the world, and how things happen. I was watching this program the other night about Vietnam and how it's becoming a big tourist attraction. There and anytime you start seeing on HGTV and people moving to Vietnam, there's something different, and even understand why people do the things they do. When I was a journalist in the Journal-Constitution, one of the things I always asked was why. Most people when I meet a person today, most of the time, if I get a chance, I ask them why do they do what they do. And you would be surprised why people do certain things. A lot of people I met in the medical profession, the best ones, especially the nurses, they took care of an aunt, they took care of grandma, they took care of somebody who was sick. My best doctors I've ever been around, their father or somebody died or suffered. And so they wanted to change it. Even some of the journalists, they're because they saw something and they had a passion for it. And when you have a passion for it, and you have, and God helps you, now you got a win-win situation.
Well, that's true. I'm a colon cancer survivor for 14 years, and I do volunteer work. But the people that volunteer, and the reason why I do it is totally different than if I wasn't a colon cancer survivor.
Right.
Because it's the feeling, the experience, you've been through it. So, and like I said, you don't mind putting the time in. It's not about the money. It's just to help people.
And that basically, this project. I am funding this project, so it's not a big money situation. When you see the exhibit, you might think that, but it's not. And hopefully, one of the things I've been a guy talked to me about maybe you should think about making a nonprofit. I'm not sure about that. It might happen later on, but right now my goal is pretty simple: two great portraits of Vietnam veterans and have them shown in their community so that people know that what these men and women went through. Because I think if you don't understand that people in your family fought for civil rights for somebody in another land, then you don't really have an understanding of the sacrifice of your family. Because you might think that, he was not my dad, he wasn't around and so forth and so on, and he wasn't this and he wasn't that and he never did this for me. And then you find out that he served in Vietnam. Maybe his best friend, head exploded beside him. Or maybe, he came from a big family, a big large family, and he goes to help some child in Vietnam, and all of a sudden, before he gets there, another soldier, and the child explodes, and all these things that are happening to him, and he has to deal with all this, and then come back home and can't vote, can't go to the bathroom because I said, so all these things happen that made him the person that he is. And
you got these water fountains that says white in color.
So all these things, my goal is simple: to take portraits of people in communities all over the United States and try to show what they did. And again, I'm really trying to find some black nurses. And somebody asked me, so how do you determine the cities that you're going to go to? I said, well, really, I'll send out a call and plea, and whoever calls me back. It's not that, and that's about as simple as can be.
Well, I'm going to help you out. And my organization is a nonprofit, but we just break even because we have people, we have to pay for where we meet and print and stuff like that. And we have volunteers that does claims to get people into the system and get benefits and all of that. And they agree to do it at no cost. So that's my approach to it. And since I've been doing this for 7 years, and you know as well as I do, you're gonna get all kind of offers, all kind of people that want to make deals, and it's gonna come after you. But my recommendation is that, what I do it to help veterans and their families, and we have to have some operating expenses, but other than that, I'm not in it to make business, to make money.
And that's that's the point. I think I told you before, I really like teaching photography, but and it's one of the oddest things. I'm shooting portraits, and I was at the paper. I was an action photographer. I hated shooting portraits, but it's weird how things come around in a circle, because I can easily form a relationship with people. I'm very patient. And most of my portrait settings are anywhere between 30 minutes to 5 minutes to get the pictures I need. It's just a matter of listening to people. Because people will tell you. My grandmama used to always say, and I think some other famous person say, people tell you who they are. You just gotta listen.
You just gotta listen. It's like you mentioned earlier, I'm a listener. So if you ask the right question and just shut up, they'll talk.
Because one of the things I do when I get ready to take portraits of anybody, I ask them questions to put them back to where they were. And that's important. And sometimes, like my exhibit, there's one portrait of a veteran. It's the only portrait in the series that he has his eyes closed. And he has his eyes closed because I asked him a question, a very personal question. And he closed his eyes and he started praying. Because it took him back in the middle of a place. And this particular veteran, he's still getting counseling years later. He's a minister.
Well, that's what I keep thinking about as we've been talking today, is there's a lot of support groups, and most of us don't go to them, but they are really helpful in, like, there's a vet center. The VA has 3 vet centers, and one is up in Marietta, and I live 2 miles from it. And the guy that has a support group just for Vietnam veterans, and I do go sometime. But when you go to those support groups and we're pretty much the same age, and we're in Vietnam at the same time, and like you were talking about the tunnel rat or whoever, that give us the opportunity to talk about it among people that know what we're talking about, and it does help.
And that's a big deal, because somebody asked me one time, "Have you been in one of those groups?" And I said, I said 2 things. Number 1 is I'm an outsider. So number 2 is I'm a journalist. So they're seeing me the way they saw their last journalist. And I don't know whether that was a good experience or a bad experience.
But
So it's one of those things that you just cannot walk in there. You just can't walk in. I said, once I get enough credibility, then you can approach situations. You know, the worst time is to approach the right situation at the wrong time.
Well, you know, I know you know because we've been talking about it. It's, you know, if there's a group of 10 of us, we kind of got to accept you before we let you in there. So that's just how it works.
And that's how it works in life. You know, in photography, I tell people, you know, one of the best photographers are good listeners. You know, when I was at the paper, I had to go photograph somebody in their house. First thing I asked them, where they want to sit.
Well, like you said earlier, when I was growing up, even though I was superintendent in Sunday school, I was class president, I was still quiet. I don't talk just to be talking. Right. So it helps to listen and let other people say what they're going to say. Then you can kind of, what I do, I kind of decipher it. Right. Decide what I want to believe and what I want to not deal with. So that helps.
How much time we got?
About 5 minutes.
Okay. But to close up, if you're interested in seeing the pictures now, they're at the gallery inside the Community Development Department in Powder Springs, Georgia, at 4488 Pineview Drive. And in February, there will be at the Riverdale Town Center and City Hall Atrium from February 3rd until February 29th. All my portraits are 30 by 40, just like the one behind me. They're pretty large, and they're all black and white. And they're black and white for a reason, because when you photograph portraits in black and white, you pay more attention to the portrait more so than what they got on in their clothing or those other things. And black and white makes all the people equal. So that's the reason I'd like to really thank Mr. Anderson for inviting me to the show. It was a godsend meeting Mr. Anderson at his home with his wife, and I thank you, sir.
Well, thank you. And a couple items that I need to get in to make sure that I keep my listeners happy. And I usually give you the number to the Agent Orange database, Agent Orange registry, and I'm going to give you two numbers. The Atlanta number is 404-321-6111, extension 2181. Again, the Agent Orange database, and if you there's still a lot of Vietnam veterans, Southeast Asia veterans that potentially were exposed to Agent Orange that are not in the database. And once you go in the database, you will be notified to go through an exam process to determine if you are potentially owed compensation from Agent Orange exposure. So you could be one of those people that are due some back pay. And the other number to call is 1-800. Excuse me, it's not 1-800. It's 1-877-222-8387. 1-877-222-8387. And one other thing I need to do is we encourage you to get your benefits and understand your entitlement. And a lot of us, it's been some years since we were discharged from the military, and we may have lost our DD Form 214, which is your discharge paper record. And The way to receive, there are several options to receive a copy of a DD Form 214. One is to go to the Georgia Department of Veterans. They have 13 offices throughout. They have 13 offices in Metro Atlanta. They have about 100 offices in Georgia. And one of the Metro Atlanta offices number is 404-656-5940. And if that doesn't work, then I recommend you contact the National Archives, and that number is 314-801-0800. Again, 314-801-0800. And in closing, my organization is Veteran Helping Veteran, headquartered ATL Inc. My office number this is a voice message number, 404-996-3790. Again, 404-996-3790. And my email is bvhv3105@gmail.com. With that, we have had a great 2 hours. Mr. Crawford and myself has had a great conversation. Hope we gave you some information that are helpful, and we looking forward to having you participate in some of his event. And I'm looking forward to having you guys back next Friday. You have any closing remark?
Again, thank you, Mr. Anderson, for inviting me. And my project is the Vietnam Black Soldiers Portrait Project.
We just summarize Mr. Crawford project and where he's going to be in February. As you know, February is Black History Month, so this is a good time to provide some information and some opportunities to our communities and to our organization as to the commitments that Black veterans made in Vietnam.